Welcome to part 2 of this little series about modeling a house with as much accuracy as possible while having very little information available. In the last video I showed you how to create a floor plan and walls from a low quality image file by importing it as a mesh plane and then adjusting it with edge loops as we go along to make up for the wrong proportions in the image. And today I want to continue with that project and show you how to model an accurate roof for the house when you don't have a lot of information on the specs of it. So let's get right into it. And if you want to follow along, I suggest you watch the previous video first if you haven't done so yet, and then come back to this one. Okay, this is where we left things last time. And before I get into constructing our roof, I want to do a little bit of a cleanup here and add the porches to the house so we know where our roof is actually going to be. So first I'm going to go to my viewport overlays here and activate face orientation and clean those up, because from the way I modeled it, pretty much everything is inside out. So I'm going to select my walls, go into face select, A to select everything, and Shift N to recalculate the normals. And I'm going to do the same thing for the ceiling, because right now the negative normals are on the inside. So same thing, face mode, N, flip. And then I'm also going to rename that ceiling to ceiling. And I'm going to put the plan into its own collection so I can deactivate it easily whenever I need to. So I'm going to select it, M, new collection, plans. So now I'm going to go back to my walls and go to vertex select. And I'm going to trace the front of the house here. I'm going to select the bottom row of vertices by holding Control to get the shortest path. And on something like this, we always have to be careful not to go too far, otherwise it might jump to the inside. So with those all selected, I'm going to hit Shift D to copy them, P to separate the selection. So I'm going to call that porch front. Front, not frony. What's a frony? You're a frony, sir. So I'm going to select my front porch and go into edit mode again. Go into top view, and now I can just trace around the porch. Because of the work I've done last time, everything is now to the correct proportions. So I can select my vertex here, GX, go to the outside of the porch, EY, extrude it to the front, EX, go all the way to the other corner here. And then grab this vertex, GX, snap it to there. It should actually be in vertex snapping. So GX snap to this one, and then I can connect those. Let me just turn on, that way you can see my cursor a little better. So now I'm going to go into local view on this and do a little bit of a cleanup, because I don't need all these vertices on my porch. Select all these, Control X to dissolve them. And now on my front edge here, I'm going to add 2 more vertices by hitting Control R and scrolling up once. And I'm going to move these over and snap them to there on the X-axis. GX there and GX there. And I'm going to connect those with an edge, because I'm not sure yet what kind of texture I'm going to give this porch. So I want to keep my options open for displacement. And displacement works so much better when you have quad topology available. So now I can select everything and hit F to fill. And again, it's all upside down. So Alt N and flip the normals. Back out of local view. And there's our front porch. And now I can do the same thing on the back side here with the back porch. And because it's the same process as on the front, I'm just going to speed right through it quickly. So the next thing I want to do is add the posts along the porches, and they will determine where the outside of our timber framing will be for the house. And that way we can determine where the actual outside of the roof is going to be. So I'm going to Shift A and add a cube. I'm going to hit M, new collection, and call it block out. And I'm going to give this cube a width of 247 millimeters to make it a 10 by 10 post. I'm going to bring it over to my corner here. And I'm going to line it up with the outside of the house. So GB, grab this vertex and snap it to that corner. And I'm going to move it out by 1829. So GY 1829 minus. And that way I'm exactly where I want to be. And now I can just copy that thing a bunch of times and line it up wherever I need it with these corners of the house, that corner, and around the backside. So Alt D X, I can grab a vertex with B and line it up here. Actually, we need to line it up on the inside. So GXB there. And then we'll just go around. On the backside here too, we just go with the measurement first and then we just copy around. So GY 2438. And now on this side, we'll just line it up with the image and then we should be good. Okay, let's see where we are. So they're floating a little bit, so I'm just gonna grab one of those and select everything on the bottom and GZ, bring that down. And because I made linked copies of all of these, they're now all gonna have that same size. And with those in place, we are now ready to build our roof. Now, just like I did with the walls before, I want to be as accurate and stick to the specs as much as possible. The thing is, for the roof, I have even less information than I had for the walls. So I basically only know 3 things. I know that my cathedral ceiling here has a pitch of 812. I know that the main roof here is gonna have a pitch of 512. And I know that this peak here is going to be at 5,944 millimeters. That's it. That's all I know. I don't have any information on the overhangs here and on this side. And with that, I also don't know exactly where the ridge is going to be. And the type of roof and the framing is also something I do not know. So for the overhangs, we'll have to go with averages. And then from there, we can determine the ridge. And for the framing, I'm just going to go with a 2x4 truss system. It's a residential property. Since I don't have any information, that's what I'm going to go with. I'm not going to go into calculating them if it's 2x4, 2x6, doubled up. That's what engineers get overpaid for. That's not my job. Keep in mind that if this was a client project, you would have to look up regional building codes and adhere to them. But then again, if this was a client project, one would hope that you have been given more information than what we have here. So because of all this, this roof will bring quite a few challenges with it, not just because we're missing tons of information, but also because we're dealing with varying slopes. The 812 here and the 512 on this end. So what we're gonna do is basically build 2 separate roofs and then stitch them back together once we have established them. All right, let's make a roof. So I'm gonna grab my ceiling here, Shift D to duplicate it, and I'm gonna hit F2 and call it roof. I'm gonna turn off the face orientation for the time being because I don't want to stare at red faces the whole time. So with my roof selected, I'm gonna go into top view. So the first thing I want to do is clean this thing up because the way we modeled the ceiling and everything, we still have a bunch of extra vertices that we don't need. So I'm going to go into local view and just like we did on the porches, I'm going to select all the vertices that I don't need and Control X to dissolve them. That is just a big mess. Oop, not the corner. Okay, now I'm going to make this rectangular. So I'm going to select all of these here and GY, bring them up there. Select these ones, GY, snap them to there. A to select everything, M, merge by distance to get rid of the double vertices that we just created. I don't really like using the auto merge because I usually tend to forget turning it off again. So that's why I just merge by distance and then get rid of those double vertices and then continue. So back out of local view, I'm gonna go into X-ray mode. So now I gotta establish the overhangs. So I'm going to select everything in the front here and I'm going to GY and snap it to the outside of the posts. GY, snap it there. And then for more weather protection on the front porch, I'm going to give this an overhang of 600 millimeters. Like I said, we have to go with average here. Most modern houses have about 300 millimeters. If you want more weather protection, an average of 600 millimeters is pretty common. So let's go GY 600 minus. And then the same thing on the back side. We're already on the outside wall here. And if we look at this end here, I'm going to go to X-ray mode for a sec. We don't have a porch here, so we have a big window, which means that overhang is supposed to provide some weather protection for the window and everything there too. So we're going to go with 600 millimeters on that side. So back into top view, select everything up here, GY 600. And then we got to bring the middle out to the outside of the post. EY. Bring it to the outside. And then we can go with 600 again. GY 600. Now we don't have an overhang here yet. That will come in a little bit once we start building our roof. So now on the sides of the building, which will be the rake, we can go with less because that's so far up, it won't add any weather protection. So we're just going to go with 300 there. GX 300 minus and GX 300. So that is the footprint of our roof. Now we can establish the ridge and then we can start building the slopes. As I said before, I want to build two separate roofs that I stitch together afterwards. So what I'm going to do is go into edge mode. I'm going to select these two edges here and hit V to tear them apart. Sounds brutal, but it's okay. So now these ones are, if I control L them, this one is one island and the other ones are separate. And now I can work on them separately and it makes it so much easier. So back into top view and I can make a loop cut right down the middle here. And that is where our ridge is going to be. Make one there. And make one there. So now we gotta add another bunch of loop cuts wherever we are at a wall. So we need one here, one there, and I'm gonna make one at the posts too. So Control R and line them up. Again, snapping is your friend. So let's make one on the outside of the posts. Same thing on the other end of the building. Control R, outside of the wall. And I'm gonna make one here too. So there will be one more on either side of the peak, but we don't know quite yet where that is gonna be. So for now, I'm gonna leave it. So next I gotta determine the slope of the main roof, the 512. And to do that, I'm gonna add a bunch of helpers. So first and foremost, I'm going to bring my cursor to the middle here. Shift S, cursor to selected. So I'm going to make sure that I'm in my block out collection here, that it's active. Shift A, add a cube. I'll make this about 100 millimeters. The real dimension of this one doesn't really matter. I'm going to make it really big and I'm going to bring it by half of its width to either side. So I have one edge right at the ridge line. So GY 50, I like to have it on the other side, so minus. So back on our roof, I'm gonna bring the cursor over to this corner now. Shift S, cursor to selected. And I'm gonna add another cube. And this one will be basically a 2x4 rafter. So Shift A, add a cube. So I'm gonna make this 89 millimeters high. And on the x-axis 38, so basically just the dimensions of a 2x4. And I'm gonna bring it over to that vertex. So GB, grab this corner and snap it to that corner, just where the cursor is. So now I need to establish the slope. So I'm gonna go into left view and I wanna rotate this thing right from this corner. So I'm gonna hit the period key and switch the pivot point to 3D cursor. I can also do that up here. And now when I rotate it, it will use the 3D cursor as the pivot point. So a slope of 512 means the roof has a degree of 22.62. It's not something I know from the top of my head, but you can look that up. So I'm gonna R 22.62 negative. So now I can bring my rafter all the way to the ridge. So I'm gonna go into vertex select, wireframe select, everything on the top here. And then I'm gonna switch over to edge snapping. And hit GG to edge slide. Go a little bit backwards and then hit Alt. So I can go past the origin point. And then I'm gonna hit Control once I get up here and snap it to our helper. I'm gonna grab just the two on the top and do that one more time. Alt, Control, snap. So now that is our rafter top. Next, I'm going to use this helper again and give it the 5,944 millimeter that we have to the top of the peak. So 5,944. The scale doesn't matter in this case, it's just a helper. So with vertex snapping, I'm gonna GZB, grab this corner and snap it to one of the bottom vertices of the walls. And if we look at the left side, this corner up here, that is our finished peak. So the top side of the rafters. And we'll get there in a minute. What I want to do first though is I'm going to make a copy of this rafter here and rotate it by 180 degrees. And I want to do it by rotating it around the top here. So Shift S, cursor to the vertex up here. And now I can just hit A to select everything. Shift D, R, Z, 180. So with that, we basically have our slope of the roof. Now we're not at the perfect height yet because this peak needs to be down here. But before we can do that, we got to bring our actual roof up. Now, because I only want to work on this part and this part back here, not on the middle, I'm going to separate them for now. So I'm going to select my roof here, select one of the vertices in the middle here, Control L to select everything that's connected, and P to separate that selection. That way, when I work on the other parts, I don't interfere with the middle part at all. So back in object mode, just select the outside parts. Go back into left view, wireframe and vertex select. And now I can bring all these up to my rafter here. So with all of them in the middle selected here, I'm gonna hit GZ and hover over this peak here on the underside. And I'm going to do that with all the other ones too, but because I don't have any vertices here, I'm going to switch over to edge snapping. Select everything here, G, Z, and hover over the edge while holding Control. And because we're constraining it to the Z axis, it doesn't really matter where we hover over that edge because it can't go left or right. GZ, snap, GZ, snap, GZ, snap, GZ, snap. And now we have our roof. Now we just got to bring it to the right height. So I'm going to grab my helper here and the roof, go back into left view, back to vertex snapping. And I'm going to bring this top peak here down to this corner. So GZB, grab that corner and snap it to there. And now we are at the right height for everything and we have our overhangs established here. So that part of the roof is basically done. What we got to do now is make a connection here and then stitch them back together. In order to do that, I'm going to make another set of helpers just like I did here right on the front here for the 8/12 pitch. So I'm going to select the middle part of the roof. Select this vertex and bring the cursor there. And now in front view, I'm going to hit Shift A, add mesh cube. And again, I'm going to make that a 2x4 and snap it to the corner. And now an 8/12 pitch has a degree of 33.69. So R 33.69 minus. And just like I did before, I'm going to switch over to edge snapping. Grab everything on the end here and snap it to the edge of our other roof part. So GG, hold Alt, and then snap it to there with the underside of the rafter. And again, same thing like before, A to select everything, Shift D, RZ 180. So we have that same option over here. Now back in object mode, select our roof part here and go into edge select. And I'm going to select these two edges here and also those ones on the other side here. And in front view, it's a little easier in wireframe. So I'm going to make sure I'm in vertex snapping for this, because then I can extrude them and snap them to this vertex here. So E and snap them to that vertex. And that worked like a charm. Now I just have to do the same thing on the other side. Select these edges. Select these edges, and I gotta grab one more on this side, which is the reason why I don't work with a mirror modifier or anything like that, because the roof is not exactly the same on both sides. But again, in front view, wireframe, E, snap it there. And now you can see we also have a bit of an overhang on this side here. There's not as much overhang as everywhere else, but I think that's okay. We have enough weather protection here and here, which is the main thing. Welcome to Knobs and Bolts, the ever-growing asset pack for high-detail, photorealistic decorative hardware for your next Arch-Viz project. Compatible with both Cycles and Eevee. Decorative hardware might seem like a small detail, but it has the power to completely transform a scene. From farmhouse chic to modern minimalist, a well-chosen knob or pull can dramatically change the look and feel of a scene. It not only adds functionality, but also enhances the overall aesthetic, tying your design together seamlessly. Without these elements, even the most beautiful render can feel incomplete. With them, your designs gain character, depth, and a polished, professional finish. Transform your renders today with the perfect finishing touch by adding this asset pack to your library. Knobs and Bolts, decorative hardware for Arch-Viz and Blender, is available now. Download today and elevate your projects to the next level. Links in the description. So now we can start putting those pieces together. So I'm gonna get the block out collection out of the way, which gets rid of our helpers too. And I'm gonna select my middle part and then the outer part and hit Ctrl J to join them back together. So now they're one object again, and now I can just put all these pieces together where I need them. So the first thing I'm gonna do is merge a bunch of vertices. So I'm gonna take this one here and merge it with this one by selecting this one next and then hit M, merge at last. I'm gonna do that on all four corners. I can go Shift R because that was my last command. I'll do the same thing here. And one more time on here. So next I'm going to connect the peak. So I'm going to select this vertex and this vertex, M, merge at center. I'm not going to worry about this part quite just yet. That will come in a minute, because before I do that, I need another two loop cuts here. I need one there and one there. And I'm going to switch to face snapping. Alt select this loop cut here. And now I'm gonna GG them and hold Control over our main roof face to snap it to that face. I'm gonna do the same thing here. GG, snap it to there. And now what you're gonna see in left view, that lines up perfectly now. So now what I can do is, in top view, bring a knife to a mesh fight by hitting K, constraining it to an angle, and then from that vertex, cut all the way through. And the same thing on this side, K, A, from that vertex, cut all the way through. And now what I can do is select these two vertices and then this one, M, merge at last. Same on the other side, M, merge at last. And now I already have a connection here. Now I can also go and select this one here and select the peak, M, merge at last. And now I gotta do one more thing before I stitch all these parts together. And that is use our knife tool to cut a diagonal line through our cathedral ceiling. So I'm going to hit K and cut from this bottom vertex here all the way to our connection. And I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. So now it appears we're missing one more loop cut here. So we got to cut right through there, and we're going to use the knife tool again for that. So KA, snap from that vertex there and to the other side. Same thing here. A to constrain on the angle, and one more. So now with all the loop cuts in place, we can now easily stitch it together by just selecting vertex, then the corresponding one in the middle, M, merge at last. And then because it was the last command, again, Shift R to repeat the last command. And we can go around and do that everywhere. And there's our roof. So now the next steps we're gonna take is separate a couple faces here. We're gonna go on the underside, and I'm gonna select all these faces here. And I'm gonna separate it by hitting P. Because I'm gonna use those faces later on to build my soffit. So I wanna have them separate from the roof. And now I'm basically ready to extrude it up. I just wanna get rid of some of those faces that I do not need on the middle here anymore. Because on the inside of the house, they will just create Z fighting, and I do not want that. So I'm gonna just delete those faces completely. Now I can A to select everything. I'm gonna bring back my blockout selection so I have my helpers. And E to extrude and snap it to the peak. And there's my roof. Now let's turn on the face orientation again, because I have a feeling, yep, everything is the wrong way around. Okay, so A to select everything, Shift N to flip it, and that looks a lot better. So next I'm gonna extend my soffit over my window here by selecting that one, taking this edge here and EX snap it to the outside of the building here. Now in the other areas, because we're gonna have open timber framing, the soffit is gonna sit a little higher. So what I can do simply is take these faces here, everything that we extruded earlier to establish that corner. I'm gonna delete those ones and then extrude from up there. So with these selected, EX snap to the corner of the building. Same over here. EX snap. And one more time on this side. Make sure I grab the right one. EX snap. And now I'm almost done. I just gotta extend the walls. So I'm gonna go back to my walls, go into vertex mode. And first I gotta make another loop cut where the ridge line is. So I'm gonna go Control R, bring one in here, and then I can snap it to the ridge. Same thing on the other side. Control R, snap it to the ridge. And get rid of this helper now. Back to the walls. And I'm gonna grab all these vertices and just snap them up here. G, Z, snap it there. And then like we did before, I'm gonna go back to edge snapping. And now I'm gonna deal with the corner in a second here. I'm just gonna finish the other side first. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my knife tool and I'm gonna go from this vertex all the way over to this vertex. And then I can get rid of this edge and this edge. And now I can extrude those vertices to create new faces. So EZ, snap it there, and then EY, snap it to that side. Same thing on the other side. This vertex, EZ, and again EY. And now I can create new faces here. Make a face, and make a face. Same on the other side. And again, same process on the other side, so I'm just gonna speed right through it. Now on this end, we have to do it a little bit differently. I can extrude this one here up. And then get rid of this edge here. Make a new face. And now because our soffit here is a little lower, I'm just gonna grab another edge loop here and snap it there. And then extrude all these y-axis there, E, Y, there. And now I can make a bunch of faces here. And this face I'm gonna flip around. And now I can get rid of my helpers here. And now same thing on the front side. And with that we have created an accurate roof for our house without having a lot of specs to work with. Okay then, so with the roof complete, it's time for the topping out ceremony. Don't go too crazy though. School day tomorrow. And before that, make sure to show that like and subscribe button a little bit of love. In the next steps, we'll add a nice looking timber frame to our house and then start buttoning it up with doors and windows and start making it look nice. I hope to see you there and thank you for watching.